nicknamed Zero because of course he is.
Huh? Hello everybody, and welcome back to the next Marvel lore deep dive. This time around, checking out 2099. Now, the aesthetic for this particular one, really cool. It's something I've been wanting to check out for a little bit. And I believe Serby also hasn't seen this video yet before, so this is going to be a blind reaction for the both of us.
Spider-Man 2099 has been my favorite superhero for like a very long time. That's it. I haven't read much else in the 2099 setting, just all of Spider-Man 2099's comics.
Gotcha.
I know a lot of the setting wasn't as popular. I think Spider-Man was obviously a big one that was popular. And I want to say Punisher 2099. I know there was one other that like people really liked, but I can't quite remember which one.
All that I know about 2099 is that what we saw from the Spider-Verse movies. That's about it. And I guess a few skins that reference it in Marvel Rivals. But of course, if you guys haven't already, please go and support Sir Superhero. Link at the very top of the description, like always.
I was conflicted on his outfit from Spider-Verse, because I liked the look of it. It looked really good, but it just looks like a spider on the design, whereas his actual blue suit costume in the comics was meant to be a skull, because it was a Day of the Dead costume that he repurposed that also just kind of happened to look like a spider.
Yeah.
And you kind of lose the skull completely in the movie design, which is a shame, but it also looks really cool, so I'm not that mad at it.
Imagine a version of the Marvel Universe where there are no more heroes. One where corporations control every aspect of daily life. One where shock is the worst swear word that you can say. This is 2099. And
what does he mean by that exactly? Do they have literal, like, vulgarity police or something like that? Like, you're not allowed to say the naughty words anymore?
No, it was, well, I believe the reason that they say shock was a comic book censoring thing, but in the comics when you read it, Miguel will just say shock in place of like fuck. So
shock or shuck?
No shocking way.
No shocking way. No. I guess we're almost there when it comes to baby tubes, so... And this isn't really all that far out. I can't imagine a universe where we start saying all these things. I mean, we gotta replace a ton of things really already. Funny. Yeah.
I like that the Spider-Verse movie included it, and they only did it once in the very beginning of the movie.
It's a little bit of a nod.
It does sound really dumb, but it is pretty, like, when you think 2099, that is what I think.
I think the Spider-Verse movies in general are just so good at referencing all the things that comic book readers would love.
Boy, is it cyberpunky. The world of 2099 is one of Marvel's more popular alternate universes, and I can't say I'm surprised. Who doesn't love a good cyberpunk dystopia now and again? Of course, the breakout star of the verse is Spider-Man 2099, who the majority of you definitely know. But the original origin of Miguel O'Hara is pretty different than in a lot of modern interpretations, and when these comics were written in the 90s...
Irish-Mexican, I believe.
Irish-Mexican is interesting.
I'm pretty sure. It's been a bit since I read them, and I have a flawless memory, as you know.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Comics were written in the 90s, the 1990s, I guess I need to clarify. 2099 was not meant to revolve just around him. It was meant as an entire universe, spanning lots of different comics, covering tons of different characters, and of course crammed with as much 90s edge as they could fit into every inch of it. It's ridiculous, of course. I had to read so much awful, shocking,
What the fuck is that Punisher outfit? Oh man, I don't know. I'm not a character designer, but everything makes me just want to look at his crotch.
Yeah.
Although, that being said, the 2099 Punisher costume in Marvel Rivals, that one is actually kind of sick. I do enjoy it. It goes over the top, but in the right ways, at least in my opinion.
Sense while I was making this video, but also, I can't lie, it's kind of a fun one. 2099 is unapologetically weird and very stupid, making it a great candidate for a long deep dive video, also helped out by the amount of retcons and reboots that this universe has had, much of which are kind of canon because 2099 is not just an alternate universe, it is the future. In this video, I'm going to try and cover every single iteration that 2099 has ever been through, so get ready for some multiverse nonsense and time travel nonsense, sometimes both at the same time, and sometimes technically neither in ways that we're just going to have to accept. Before we get into the deep lore, we need to address one very important question. What exactly is 2099, cosmologically speaking? Largely thanks to the Spider-Verse movies and similar things, you probably think of it as an alternate universe, but like I said, it is the future. So is
So is it like 616, or I'm pretty sure that's the mainline universe in the comics too?
616 is the mainline universe.
Okay.
If I had to guess, just based on what I read, I would say yes, because now I'm trying to remember. When Miguel goes back in time and interacts with Pete, it's either Ultimate or it's either 616. And now I'm second guessing myself, but I think he goes back to 616. Unless he doesn't. I don't. I'm second guessing.
Regardless, from the Spider-Verse movies, them traversing through the multiverse is kind of a regular thing, which I would assume is also in the comics here. So, does it really matter?
In the comics, especially when he actually went back in time, when he has his white suit, there were like policeman type people who were like tracking him down for like going back in time illegally.
I forget what they were called, but I'm pretty sure that we saw them in Deadpool and Wolverine, which I know you still haven't seen yet, I'm assuming.
I have not seen it yet.
I'm pretty sure they show up in one of the TV shows as well, because that's what I saw people talking about. But
Loki
the TVA
has something
or something like that?
Similar, but that is not what it is in the comic that I read.
Okay.
This comic well predates Loki, and I think Loki invented the TVA. I could be wrong on that too, but I had not seen that prior to Loki.
Well, regardless, we might cover it in this video, so let's see.
True.
2099, the literal destined future of the main Marvel universe as we know it. Like if you were in present day Marvel and time traveled, would you end up in 2099? The answer, definitively, is yes.
Okay.
Then no.
That's what
then
I thought.
No again. Then one more no. Then yes. Then two more yeses. Then technically it was the present time for a little while. Then briefly yes again. And then finally no. But also sort of yes. What kind of horrible answer was that?
Perfect. I love
well,
time
that horrible
travel.
answer is why the video is 2 hours long. As I always say, we have a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started. And we don't have to jump right into time nonsense, because we will start with the 2099 of the original 90s comics. To begin, let's talk about how we got to this point. After all, if 2099 is the real
Spider-Man
future of Marvel,
2099. It's like that perfect retro comic book style that I love it.
How did things become so incredibly cyberpunk? The decline begins around the year 1999 with a great cataclysm. We don't actually see a lot of this cataclysm in the comics, but an official handbook of the Marvel Universe refers to it as a civil war between humans and a rising mutant population. It also says that there was a spatial barrier that is never explained which blocked humans from leaving the Milky Way. I couldn't find a lot of other reference to this, so I think it was just a quick excuse made up here to explain why 2099 doesn't do a lot of space stuff. The Mutant War lasts for many years, and while humanity eventually wins, it comes at a great cost. Both sides were decimated, and given the nature of the conflict, the superhuman population was hit especially hard. Enough superheroes and supervillains perish that this era is considered the end of the age of heroes, and essentially, the Marvel Universe isn't a superhero one for the next several decades, though it wouldn't exactly be a normal one either. Over the following century, most of the world's governments either lose their power or fall completely, a lot of Earth's surface is turned into uninhabitable wasteland, and California in particular is hit with so many earthquakes and terrorist attacks that large portions of it just straight up sink into the sea, leaving only a smaller island behind. It gets
Holy shit, poor California, man. I grew up there. Oh no.
Damn.
Well, from what I've heard, it's getting pretty close to that state. in the current day and age, so I guess we're not that far off.
States are in a
So
weird
sad.
place right now.
Yeah.
It's wild. And predictably, as this is all happening, corporations are doing what corporations do and amassing as much power as they can, leading to them
Obviously.
being the dominant force in the year 2099. You know, cyberpunk stuff. While there are many corporations in 2099, and we'll touch on a lot of them over the course of this video, the one at the top of the heap is Alchemax. Alchemax is
That's where
not
Miguel
technically
works.
the rulers of the United States of America. There is a president and American government. They just don't really do anything because Alchemax gets to pull all the strings. From a lore perspective, Alchemax doesn't really have like a specialty, they pretty much do everything. But for our purposes, the ones that matter most in the comics are their research and development division, led by a man named Tyler Stone, and the Public Eye, led by a man very subtly named Fearmaster. The Public Eye is the police force of 2099, once again with all the power of a government organization, but technically not one. They are entirely privately owned by Alchemax. Alchemax and most of the other American corporations are based out of Nueva York, which is the
That is so dystopian when you see freaking Captain America shilling a brand drink. He's like, oh, I love Coke. I love Pepsi. Yeah. Captain America, people. Oh, Jesus. Iron Market. What is that even supposed to be? Do they sell Iron Man suits? Or is he just like, I don't know, they sell like scrap metal?
I have no idea.
I love the branding on that one sign that is just a T and no other explanation. You don't need to know.
Yeah.
2099 version of New York City. It's basically what you'd expect from 2099 NYC, and if you're curious about the name, I don't believe the change is ever explicitly explained. However, this is just a world-building element that shows up a decent amount in these comics. There's been a good amount of cultural mixing over the century to 2099, and it seems like America and Mexico have had some of the most. There's a lot more Spanish mixed in with English, which you'll just see scattered throughout things. All of this is fairly standard cyberpunk fare. Corporations control everything, nobody is surprised. But there's another element of 2099's world building that sets it apart from other similar settings, that being their religion. A lot of cyberpunk decides to handle religion in one of two common ways. The first option is to make up some sort of weird techno-religion, and the second is to just ignore the concept altogether. But
You know, once again, I'll say, I think you'd be super into 40k. We should find some time to check that out someday.
We'll have
Dip
to
your toes
dive
into it a little bit
some
at least. There's a lot of weird stuff that I think you'd enjoy. The usual body
I
horrors
think
is up too.
unfortunately you might be right.
Yeah.
2099 doesn't do either of those, and instead takes an angle that is far more distinctly Marvel. That's right, religion in 2099 is literal hero worship, which actually makes a lot of sense. After all, you have documented cases of superpowered people flying around and protecting civilians only 100 years prior. That is a prime candidate to make a religion out of.
That makes a lot of sense. When I'm looking at something like Fallout New Vegas when I was playing that, there was this faction called the Kings. And they were basically all Elvis Presley impersonators. But, you know, they were like, they found records of the guy, and all of them talked about how he was the king, and how he ruled over the lands and all that, and how, you know, he was the ideal man. So they sort of formed a group around that, a faction, in order to uphold peace, while also, well, trying to speak like Elvis Presley and impersonate him. It's great.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, that makes sense. It is a piece of forgotten history. During the post-apocalypse, they don't really have any of this knowledge, so they're assuming a lot of things based off of what was written before that they were able to find. So yeah, that's just how it's going to go.
There's a moment pretty early in Miguel's run. I forget exactly when, but he falls into like the lower regions of Nueva York, which is like the slums, basically.
Yeah.
And a Thorite is what they call him.
A Thorite?
Saves him on his little kite flyer thing. And he sees, because Miguel's in this Spider-Man suit at this point, and he's like, wait, you're like the Spider-Man guy. And it's kind of what pushes Miguel into actually taking up the Spider-Man mantle as like Spider-Man.
Uh-huh.
Because originally Miguel wanted nothing to do with it. He was literally just trying to get away from Alchemax.
That's fair. Interesting. Did we see this like Undercity part in Spider-Verse briefly? When
Very briefly.
yeah, I think he was
Super
running
briefly.
away, and then it was like a deep red and dank.
It's very like smoggy, nasty.
Yeah, the place
And
where you don't want to be.
drops is like it's almost like an endless pit where you just keep going down deeper.
It's a metaphor for capitalism.
Yeah,
The
of
exact
course.
level of religious belief that the people of 2099 have in these heroes seems to vary by denomination, I guess would be the word. One group, helmed by the leader known only as Barrio Man, focused on the ideals of the heroes. Their purpose was to keep alive values of people like the Avengers, Fantastic Four, X-Men, etc. Honor, courage, humanity, these things that the heroes stood for. It was, to be very clear though, still practiced like a religion. They had a holiday named Heroes Day. They even had their own wedding ceremonies officiated by Barrio Man, where the couple would swear on the Codex Heroica. They have no actual superhumans in their ranks, at least not at the start, but it is worth noting that Barrio Man in particular does kick ass. His whole thing is using this superhero iconography to inspire hope and nobility in his followers, and that's actually the reason we never get his name under the mask. He is technically a legacy character. We see the first Barrio Man die in the pages of Punisher 2099, and in the same issue, a new one appears because someone has to take up the mask and be the spirit of their community. However religious it was,
that is pretty cool. And, well, I don't know all the specifics around it, but it sounds like a nice thing to do, especially during this particular, more hopeless point in time.
As far as religious leaders go, it seems like a pretty good-spirited religion, I guess. What do you say? Like, I feel like in a lot of, especially these kind of cyberpunk dystopian religions, you see just a lot of like cults and manipulation. So
yeah, that's the usual thing you're gonna see, or like, well, as you said, manipulation of history to make people believe a certain way that is more advantageous to you for your ulterior motives and whatnot. Yeah, you're gonna find a lot of that. In a way, it almost feels like how I, as a Buddhist, sort of view other religions, because the way we view them is that they're not wrong in what they believe, but religion in and of itself, the faith, is what guides you into becoming a better version of you, right? The complete human being, in a sense. And whatever path that you take, none of them are wrong, as long as it leads to your own enlightenment, right? So in this aspect, I do enjoy the way that he's interpreted the heroes, and he's taken all the good values in order to maintain the peace, remind people what it is to be civil and human, and to be better than, you know, animals, which we can very much, very easily drop down into with some of the other stuff you see in a cyberpunk setting.
definitely, yeah.
Man's group did still focus on the heroes as aspirational figures, not literal gods who were going to swoop in and change things. But not everybody saw it that way. After all, the Avengers did have a literal god in their ranks. Enter the Thorites, a religious group that for one said screw metaphor, the literal actual Thor is going to appear again in a second coming and save us, and also screw subtlety. When we first see a Thorite, he is hang gliding around the city in a full costume, proclaiming the word of Thor into a megaphone. The Thorite religion is kind of based, actually. One of their main tenets is that the tyrants of corporations must repent because their Lord Thor will be returning to, quote, smite down the frost giants of industry. And you know what? Looking around modern day America, hell yeah, praise the Odin son.
Hell
and
yeah.
with the Thorites briefly established, I think I've covered everything that I want to when it comes to 2099's baseline world building. We will see these elements addressed again, of course, but now that you have some simple context, we can start talking about individual character stories. As I mentioned in the intro of the video, 2099 was never written to be just a Spider-Man thing. He was the first and most popular of them, to be fair, but the comic line released with 4 series all around the same time. Spider-Man 2099, Doom 2099, Punisher 2099, and Ravage 2099.
Who's Ravage?
These comics were all really interconnected.
For
example,
have not heard much on that.
This may be the first time I've heard of that name, to be honest with you. don't think you know them in the MCU at all.
In Spider-Man
I don't
2099
think so.
issue 2, we see the head of Alchemax having a video conference with a rival CEO, and in Doom 2099 issue 1, we see this exact same conversation
side.
word for word from the other side of the call.
Yeah.
That provides us a nice little transition, so let's start with Doom 2099. This also makes narrative sense because
I love this pose. This is so, like, absolutely corny and awesome and epic at the same time. It sort of encapsulates how I view Doom as a character.
I like the Doom belt.
Well, he's got to show off that he's got a big D.
this one doesn't star a 2099 character.
I love
Doom
older comics that
2099
just put the letter of their hero name just somewhere big on the costume.
It's awesome.
is Doom, like the Doom from all the other Marvel stuff.
Really?
The comic begins with two criminals on the run from a police drone, suddenly interrupted by Dr. Doom himself just magically manifesting in the desert
Doom
in front of them, accompanied by one of the longest comic book sound effects I've ever seen. Doom's memory is a little bit messed up, but he knows enough to tell that he's been gone for some time. He's still the same guy though, and so in true Doom fashion, he strikes a sassy little pose, blows up the police drone in one strike, and then demands to be taken to whoever is ruling Latveria in this new time. That turns out to be a character with one of my favorite names in the entire 2099 universe, Tiger Wilde, a cyborg who has successfully isolated Latveria from corporate control and now rules it with an iron fist. Doom barges into Wilde's office, which is apparently a regular event, as some dialogue implies that Doombots try this on a semi-regular
Another Doom
basis,
robot?
but of course Victor Von Doom is no Doombot, so he puts up more of a fight. This ends, however, in something very, very rare in comics, Dr. Doom getting his ass kicked.
What?
This is, in fairness,
Impossible.
absolutely Doom's fault for not doing his research before trying to pick a fight. After all, for him, it has not been that long, but for the outside world, technology has advanced 100 years. He is woefully unprepared to face Wilde, and his armor gets disabled instantaneously.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's, for those of you who have seen the Free Run anime or read the manga, there is a particular demon in that series that was sort of like frozen by Free Run and the party because he was too powerful for them to defeat at the time. And the whole point of, after Aaron's journey, they have to go and get rid of the demon. The demon shoots his most powerful spell that, unfortunately, after all these years that have gone by, is now considered basic attack magic. The poor dude. He got absolutely destroyed. Unfortunately, time ever moves on. And so does technology and advancement. Doom was not ready. I'm sure he's going to be. Just give him like 30 minutes or something. He'll be back.
Yeah.
Wilde then removes Doom's mask, revealing that the guy under there is not Dr. Doom. He looks distinctly different, he's too young, he doesn't have scars, etc., which is weird because earlier in the comic, we saw him manifest in that time portal. This will be explained later. In comic terms, it was a few years later, but for you, it's only going to be a couple minutes, so just hang on.
Okay.
Fortunately for Doom, Wilde then leaves disposal of the body to one of his underlings, a woman named Fortune, and rather than throwing the body away, she takes Doom to a Romani camp. Yes, Doom 2099 not only actively acknowledges that Doom is Romani, it makes a plot point out of it, which is very surprising. From here, the comic goes largely as you would expect. Doom working with the Romani rebels to build up technology again so that he can take down Tiger Wilde and regain control of Latveria. What you might not expect is how fast he's able to do this. Doom controls Latveria again by issue 4 of the 44-issue comic, which just goes to show, don't mess with Doom when his country is at stake. Then the rest of the series is Doom fighting as a monarch once again, though in this he is cast as an anti-hero for a while rather than a straight-up villain. I'm not going to go over all this quite yet because I want to talk about the origin arcs for the other 4 series, but just for the sake of you guys listening, I will explain whether he was the real Doom or not.
I can definitely see him playing the role as more of an anti-hero rather than a straight-up villain, despite how many times he's always shown up as just a straight-up villain. Because Doom, to me, at least feels like the character who's going to be out there doing things for his own sake, for whatever his motives are. And if those motives just happen to be within the role of an anti-hero, then an anti-hero he shall be.
Doom always, is like a Doom first, Latveria first, anything else. Like, there are a couple other characters that he would go out of his way for, but
Valeria Richards?
Yeah, yeah. If the plot demands that he help the good guys to save whatever those things are, those couple things that are his number one priority, 100% he would be.
Yeah. So like here, make me Sorcerer Supreme and I'll stop the vampires. But after that, I'm gonna use his power for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
So you just stay
I
put,
think that's
right?
why people go to him sometimes, because at the end of the day, he's not just like evil, villainous villain, right? He has his objective, and that's not always a villainous objective. But
he's always going to have an ulterior motive.
It's like, why would you do that? Yeah, you will lose the conflict.
The short answer is that yes, this is main universe Doctor Doom, but he had been fused with a different guy, leading to his DNA and that guy's being combined, and also memories of that man being infused into Doom's own consciousness. It's weirdly less of a plot point than you would think and doesn't matter for the majority of the series. It was just a way to introduce a little bit more drama as to Doom's identity. Now let's move on to the next 2099 launch title, where we will firmly stay in anti-hero territory because this one is Punisher 2099. Punisher 2099's real name is equally as edgy as his codename. He is named Jake Gallows, and before becoming a vigilante, he was a police officer for the Public Eye, the private security force owned by Alchemax. Like the Punisher before him, Jake's family was murdered by criminals, this time a man named Kron Stone, who was human at the time but would go on to become Venom 2099 later. Extra unfortunately for Jake, Kron Stone was the son of Tyler Stone, vice president of Alchemax. Therefore, while Kron was brought in for the murders, unsurprisingly, nepotism won out and he was released with nothing but a slap on the wrist. Outraged by this, Jake ended up digging into some secret Public Eye archives, where he stumbled upon a record of the original Punisher's war journal. The final page of this ended with a call to action. You who find this, I charge you to carry on my work. Given this call and the very specific situation he was in, resembling that of Frank Castle, Jake took up the call and became Punisher 2099. In this role, he's the Punisher. He did exactly what you think he did.
He punishes
though arguably,
people.
Jake is a little bit more ethical than even Frank was, at least in the early 2099 stuff. He starts off just killing all criminals in the standard Punisher tradition, but he does have a special focus on members of the corrupt Public Eye, and that becomes a larger part of his thing going forward as he learns that a lot of the criminals he's been sent after are just people who have been shunned by society and doing what they need to get by. Plus, given how unambiguously
Yeah, especially in a cyberpunk situation like this, I feel like a lot of crime that is happening is just people who have literally no other choice anymore, or were forced into this sort of life. So that begs the question, is you taking their life really doing justice? Are you the good guy in this situation? Don't know.
I mean, at the beginning, Miguel branded a criminal just because he tried to run away from Alchemax, basically.
Oh, well, there you go. Will Miguel deserve punishment? Must he be killed too because he's a criminal?
They didn't know it was Miguel at the time. They blamed Spider-Man. So they're chasing Spider-Man. But
well, you can blame Spider-Man for everything. He gets blamed for it anyway, so it's like I blame Draco, but of the Marvel Universe.
Soonishly evil the Public Eye usually is, it's not that difficult to just see this Punisher as a lot closer to a straight-up hero. The Public Eye is way quicker to just murder people than actually deal with problems. They actively enable humans.
Well, it's less paperwork, right? You might as well. Just a bang bang, it's just all over. Nice and easy. Reminds me of like the Judge Dredd movie. I haven't read any of the comics before. The new movie was really damn good, and it is a crime that it did not get a sequel. Absolutely bombed at the box office, but it's actually a really good action movie.
Experimentation. Plus, allow me to remind you that their leader is named Fearmaster, and his power is just body horror murder because he can transmute people by touching them. In one scene, he turns a lady's leg into solid bone just for annoying him, and then she's stuck like that. Punisher, shoot this guy. Though, as an ironic spin on the first Punisher, the Gallows version doesn't always immediately kill people. He does a lot, but other times, in the sick, twisted world of 2099, jail time is actually a worse fate. Jail doesn't exist in this universe because their form of punishment is far more immediate, which I'll talk about in a second, and so Gallows just like starts up his own mini prison based on jails of the past because he wants people to sit and suffer for their crimes for a longer period of time. Which I guess would be one thing depending on what the normal sentences for criminals were, but it's not like they just let people off or hurt them really bad and let them go. It is specifically and explicitly stated multiple times in multiple comics that one of the main forms of criminal punishment in 2099 is this thing called gerotoxin, which ages you instantaneously. So rather than putting people in jail, they'll just inject them with a chemical, and then that person will instantaneously age 40 years or whatever.
It makes me think of a movie. I forget the name of the movie now. But they had these like wristbands or whatever that had time on them, and that was like the remaining amount of time that you had left to live. And they would use that as like currency in order to buy things. And you'd get paid extra time whenever you went to work and stuff like that. In a way, it reminds me of that, where you're literally just paying a debt by paying with your life's time, which is crazy. But I suppose in this world with this technology, yeah, they probably have that. It makes things go by quicker rather than keeping somebody in a jail. Imagine having to do that, wasting a ton of time and resources, keeping them alive. Just speed up the process.
Which, in my opinion, is way, way scarier, actually. That's terrifying.
Yeah.
The implications of this are never really addressed, of course. It's just one of those cases of a side thing in the 2099 universe being very weird. But I can use that as a jumping off point to talk about how ridiculous these comics often are, because man, Punisher showcases it well. Really, this panel alone says everything that I need to. Look at him. Look at the pose he's doing. Plus, if that wasn't enough, this pose is him breaking into a hospital. What? But don't worry, the hospital was a front. How do we learn it's a front? Someone pulls off a dude's blanket and he's holding a gun under there. And then Punisher takes out all the attackers with a weapon called a grenazer, which best I can tell is just like a rocket-powered stick that shoots tasers. And every 2099 comic is like this. It's not just a Punisher thing. Anyway, Jake is able to continue his work as the Punisher due to his own capabilities, sure, but in no small part thanks to staggering incompetence on the part of the public eye as they try to stop him. Jake never actually quits his public eye job while he is acting as the Punisher. He's a police officer too, which is how he gets some secret information. And he is so trusted in his officer job that he is the guy assigned to the Punisher case, which he then, of course, just doesn't solve. And let me remind you, he doesn't wear a mask as the Punisher. He's running around full face exposed, and some...
Yeah, that would make absolutely no sense, especially with the level of technology they have, likely at this point, to recognize people on and correctly identify them. Make sure that they can't run away from debts, you know? That would 100% be a thing that they would have.
I never read the Punisher comics, because they're pretty funny looking.
It does sound pretty funny.
How his identity is not known, and he is assigned as the officer to catch himself. Technically, he uses a device called a face scrambler, which is basically a digital mask that replaces his face in surveillance with this weird pixelated skull, but presumably this only works on machines, and he doesn't have an actual mask on under it. The Marvel Wiki says that...
Okay. Now, there was something very similar to this, actually, in Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex Season 1. There was, like, this big bad who was essentially a terrorist, and they had this similar, like, face scrambling technology, so it was really hard to track them down. But it was understandable that it was hard, because all of the, like, investigators assigned to the job were all, like, part cyborg, you know? They were cyborgs. They had augmented eyes in order to correctly identify people, in order to enhance their vision. But because of their augments, then the face scrambler works on them. Yeah. Which is why the one human, fully human investigator on the team was assigned to the job. And he had one hell of a journey to go through. It was super gripping. I love that arc so much. Yeah.
That sounds good.
that this also distorts visual perception, but the citation on this is to an official handbook of the Marvel Universe, and those are written with less canon oversight after the fact, so this was probably somebody just compensating for this weird gap in the originals. In his second stroke of absolutely incredible luck, another special agent is assigned to investigate the Punisher's identity. She actually figures out that it's Jake, but then the two fall in love, so she doesn't turn him in and later ends up dying to protect his identity. Jake Gallows really is just a stupid idiot who survives the danger of 2099 through dumb luck, determination, and a whole bunch of guns. But you
know, you don't need much more than that. That sounds like a great time.
Just bumbling through with a bunch of guns.
Yeah.
I like it.
Needs to be, so he's fine. Halfway through the first 4 2099 books now, we get to Ravage 2099, a name that probably rings bells for far fewer of you, but with good reason. Ravage was a 2099 original. The story begins with Paul Philip Ravage. Yes, Ravage is his actual name, though maybe it's supposed to be pronounced Ravage or something, I don't know. Like Punisher, he is a character related to the Alchemax police state, but a different division of it. Ravage's origin gives us a little bit more information on how exactly the corporations rose to power, and it happened in such an incredibly cyberpunk way, an event known as the Pollution Wars. Ravage's whole thing is about pollution and the environment side of cyberpunk, and that starts when a bunch of corporations successfully convince the American public that the government is in fact responsible for pollution and the corporations are all innocent. Enough people believe this lie that the Megacorps eventually stage a full-on revolt against the US government, overthrowing it and installing a new quote-unquote eco-friendly one in its place, though this is unsurprisingly just a puppet organization controlled by the corporations themselves. Ravage was a hero in this war, but on the corporate side, not because he was pro-corporation, but because he fully bought into all the nonsense they were spewing. This made him a perfect candidate.
Well, the unfortunate part is propaganda is propaganda for a reason, and it is incredibly effective when used correctly. Especially in a time where the flow of information is controlled. The majority of people aren't really going to know what actually happened. Heck, some of the things that we believe happen nowadays might not even be true. But we just believe it because that's what we were taught, you know?
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, the government is really good at if I say it enough times, eventually it'll become true. And when you control things like, the history books, then that just becomes even more the case.
Candidate to be the hero of the people in the corporation's new government, and so he got a cushy new job. This position was as the head of Eco Central, Alchemax's anti-pollution division, which sounds great in theory, but in practice was just more corporate super cops. Under this new regime, pollution of any kind was on the same level of offense as terrorism, which, as I'm sure nobody saw coming, was just an excuse for Alchemax to disappear anyone they didn't like under the very, very vague charges of pollution. Ravage himself isn't really relevant to this, though. He's more of a figurehead to appease the public than anything else. But the moment he finds out about rumors of corruption and starts looking into him, his superiors deem him too much of a threat, frame him for crimes, and get him arrested. He is then banished to Hell Rock, the barren, irradiated landscape outside of Nueva York, which is where a lot of the series takes place. Ravage is very much the outside of the city wasteland hero kind of character for this cyberpunk setting. For one, he helps out the poor outcast community led by Barrio Man. Yes, he comes back for a couple issues in this series. And also, he fights Deathstrike, and oh boy, we gotta take a minute for Deathstrike. So this is Ravage's nemesis. His name is spelled like this, which is the most 90s thing I've ever shocking seen. He is the ruler of Hell.
I mean, we saw the Captain Britain Core video, so we're familiar with this. This is just how it was.
Hell Rock and the mutoids that exist within it, and unsurprisingly, he actually has a deal where he's working with the corporations back inside the city. So that's all fairly normal, at least in the context of the setting. Why did I feel such a need to shout out Deathstrike specifically? Well, it's because of who he is under this incredibly edgy suit. His real name is Graham Stryker, And he is the former president of the United States.
What?
Yeah, remember how Alchemax and the other corporations deposed this guy? They exiled him to Hellrock after that, and prolonged exposure to the radiation mutated him, gave him death touch powers, and now the president of the United States is this. And Deathstrike was not the only one to receive powers from prolonged exposure to this radiation. Ravage himself would gain new abilities over the course of the series. His first power he got through surgical augmentation, he could shoot energy blasts out of his hands, but secondly, he was turned into this more animalistic figure just by existing in Hellrock for too long. In this form, he had enhanced strength, speed, and durability, as well as claws and horns, which could be used as natural weapons, though even in his human state, he was a war hero before the events of the series, so he was a trained fighter. His control over the powers changed a few times as the comic went on. Sometimes he could control the transformation and switch between human and monster form at will, other times he was stuck as the monster permanently. It just depends on what point in the series you're reading.
Yeah, whatever
Ravage
we need.
briefly becomes a CEO himself after returning to Nueva York, taking over the megacorp Green Globe, which was always actually run by his family. However, Ravage himself was estranged from them for some time and only regained control once his brother was assassinated. This status quo wouldn't last too long, and Ravage would eventually succeed Deathstrike as the leader of Hellrock, but we're going to get to that a little bit more in a minute. As the intro very much implied, the timeline of 2099 is weird, and so I'm jumping around, but I'm doing it for a very good reason. You're just going to have to bear with me. Though I don't think anybody's going to mind this particular jump, because now we finally reach Spider-Man 2099. Everything you think you know about his origin from the Spider-Verse movies, yeah, throw that out. This one is completely different. Okay. Spider-Man 2099 issue 1 shows us Miguel O'Hara, a genius engineer and geneticist working for Alchemax on a very shady project known as the Corporate Raiders. The purpose of the operation was to create agents who could assist Alchemax in hostile takeovers of other corporations. Now, hostile takeover is a term...
You mean like, knocking down the front door and murdering their CEO? Hostile takeover?
In the real business world, but in 2099 cyberpunk land, hostile means hostile, so this was essentially a superpower project. The core of Miguel's research involves infusing animal DNA into humans, which in Alchemax's defense is like the most reliable way to make a superhero. Unfortunately, it's not working very well, and all of their test subjects end up dying or getting mutated into horrifying monstrosities. Eventually, all these unethical experiments get to be too much for Miguel's conscience, and he approaches his boss, Tyler Stone, to quit his position. But not only does Tyler not accept Miguel's resignation, he actively drugs him with a super addictive substance called Rapture. Now, Rapture is no ordinary drug. It was essentially a control tool developed by Alchemax for use on their less cooperative employees. Once ingested, it bonds to the user's DNA permanently, making the addiction irreversible. However, Miguel had an ace up his sleeve thanks to his particular knowledge. While he might not be able to cure his new addiction, he could possibly push the reset button on it. And so that night, he snuck into the Alchemax facilities that he worked in and started using his machine on himself. The idea of this was not to give himself superpowers. He was not trying that part of the procedure. What we learn is that he had actually input his own genetic code into the machine as part of some earlier trials that were being done on apes. His new goal was to overwrite his genetics with his genetic template from before the Rapture was bonded to him. Therefore,
okay, so effectively it would just be a straight reset, load, save, right? Also, very interesting name for the drug, the Rapture. I believe that's like a event for Christianity where people just get zapped up into heaven or something like that.
Pretty much, yeah.
I suppose a fitting name if they drug people with this and then Alchemax just makes them disappear. I would imagine so.
They are then stuck at Alchemax because of the superhero didn't say here is he would give him more of the Rapture to like satiate his addiction.
So he'd have to agree to whatever. I see.
Making it like the addiction never happened, which is actually pretty smart. Unfortunately for Miguel, one of his superiors had seen him entering the lab and figured that this would be a great chance to get rid of an employee he didn't particularly like and frame it as an accident. So while Miguel was undergoing the procedure, this guy messed with the controls, overloading the device and setting the DNA sequence to Spider, hoping that it would just kill Miguel like it had everybody else. But as we can all guess, that's not what happened. This time, the procedure functioned as intended, turning Miguel O'Hara into a Spider-Man. And in this case, I mean it way more literally than in Peter Parker.
Miguel's different than a lot of other Spider-Men.
Yeah.
His origins are very different. Which is why people thought it was funny in the Spider-Verse movie, why he talks about like Miles getting his powers through like different means.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you could argue he's the least Spider-Man-y of like a lot of the Spider-Men.
Mm-hmm. In the comics, does he actually have like the fangs from being like a half spider too? I see.
Does he has the fangs? He doesn't have the like wall crawly like spider.
Like, he uses his claws to just
claws.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he's very light sensitive, so like he likes to hang out in the dark because of that. Which they kind of joke at in the movie, but they don't like explicitly say. And he doesn't have the spider sense, which they also make a very good joke at in the movie.
Oh yeah, everybody dodges it. He's like, "Where are y'all going?" It is a really cool twist on the classic like blending of DNA into superhero form that a lot of the other superheroes basically have. And you could argue that the other Spider-Men do have something similar happen to them. It's just done in a different way with a different outcome. Yet still similar enough to be a Spider-Man along with the others.
He's also one of the only like main Spider-Man with organic webbing, which makes sense given how he actually became Spider-Man.
Well, if anybody was to have organic webbing, it would be this guy. It would make a lot of sense, yeah.
His physiology is a lot more bestial than most spider people, as he possesses claws, venomous fangs, and organic webbing. Of course, he also has the standard superhuman speed, strength, agility, etc., and a healing factor, but to balance this out a little bit, he doesn't actually have spider sense. Though his powers also include extremely advanced senses and minor telepathy, so he doesn't really need spider sense. As Miguel's exiting the device, the guy who sabotaged it tries to shoot him, hits...
Will you shut the shock up for one?
It sounds really dumb, but it's pretty endearing to me. I like it.
There are kids reading this comic, damn it! I mean, shock it!
The machine instead and causes an explosion. This throws the supervisor out a window, and while Miguel tries to catch him, this is when he realizes that he has claws, so instead he ends up accidentally shredding the guy's arm, and he falls to his death. This catches the attention of some nearby public eye officers, and all of a sudden, Miguel is a fugitive. He escapes by catching the hang glider of a passing Thorite. Remember that I mentioned that a while ago? This is where it becomes relevant. The Thorite recognizes this dude as someone very Spider-Man-like and immediately starts coming to his assistance, as Spider-Man is seen as a harbinger of Thor. Yeah, he doesn't really care about there being a new Spider-Man around, but if there's a new Spider-Man, then there might be Thor later, and so this is somebody worth helping. Miguel doesn't originally want to be a superhero at all, and in fact, he only suits up because a bounty hunter named Venture has been sent to capture the escaped Spider Guy as Alchemax wants to research him, and Miguel decides to hide his identity during that fight. And now I get to share what is one of my favorite fun facts in all of Marvel, the nature of Spider-Man 2099's costume, because it's very weird and tells a fun little story about Marvel publication in the 90s. The costume is made out of unstable molecules, which is the same thing that the Fantastic Four suits are made out of in the main universe. This is a little bit more common in 2099 apparently, but it's very expensive, and the only reason that Miguel had a suit made out of them lying around was that it was a Day of the Dead costume that he wore at a festival, and apparently those festivals get crazy enough that he wanted an indestructible costume for it, but the...
Well, what do they do at those parties, man? God.
I don't know.
Well, they
really
festival.
He's a party kind of guy either. So.
They festival hard. Jesus.
A real fun fact comes with the suit's color. Now that probably sounds weird to you. I mean, you're looking at a picture of it right now, and it's red and blue.
It's the black suit.
Except it's not. Spider-Man 2099's costume is canonically red and black. There are multiple mentions of this in really early Spider-Man 2099 comics. People explicitly say that he is wearing black, his black-clad butt, etc. But it looks blue, so why on earth is that?
That's how they did comic
If you're
book
very
shading
familiar
at
with
the time. Venom was also very blue for the same reason.
What was the specific reason? Do you know why? Or was it just a stylistic choice?
It prints better, I would assume, but I don't actually know.
You would think that, like, black ink would be easier to come by than dark blue, but...
I don't know, yeah.
90s comics, you probably know
I
the
wasn't
answer to
doing
this
physical
already.
printing
And
back
even if
in
you're
the
not
time.
familiar with 90s comics,
yeah.
you know what the art style is, right? Like if I say 90s comics, you can picture a rough image in your mind because a lot of them shared similar visuals. One very common element on those suits was to highlight black areas of the costume with the color blue. You can even see this on Venom. He looks blue in a lot of...
Because you don't want him just to be a black
Actually,
mash.
yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Because if you want to, draw a shadow on the person already in a black costume, it is going to be incredibly difficult to see, and they're just going to be completely black. So, yeah, it's not going to have all these, like, dimensions to the character.
I remember when the original Insomniac Spider-Man came out. The black suit is one of the unlockable suits in it, right?
Yeah.
And it's titled that. It's titled the 2099 black suit because that's what everyone knows it as and refers to it as. Anyone who did not know Spider-Man 2099 or just, I guess, old comics in general, but specifically 2099, look at it and go, why is it blue? It's called the black suit. And that's because visually it has always been very blue. That's how people picture the black suit, even though it's technically, black. So when it comes to like interpreting it later in video games, because he was also in crossover one with Spider-Man and Spider-Man Noir, I think. I forget what it's called, Shattered Dimensions, something like that. They also had the struggle of trying to make 2099 and have him look like 2099, and they decided to go more blue for that one too, because otherwise it just doesn't look like Spider-Man 2099.
Yeah. It's how they had to do it back in the day. It makes a lot of sense. At this point, it's a fun little factoid of history of comics. So yeah, I think that's cool. We can just keep it that way.
Because that's how the artist decided to draw his shading. This was what Spider-Man 2099's suit was originally intended to be. However, for reasons unknown, that's not how it got interpreted. Honestly, if I had to guess, I bet it's just association with the character of Spider-Man. Readers were so used to seeing him in red and blue that they interpreted this costume as not black with blue highlights, but blue with black shadows. And that misconception became so popular that it eventually just became true. If there's a definitive point where his suit changed color, I can't actually find it. Marvel just stopped acknowledging it as black and red and started acknowledging it as blue and red, and since that's what everyone thought it was anyway, it went unnoticed. Of course, in the later 2019-2099 reboot, which we will be talking about later in this video, they go back and retcon in an explanation for this. But trust me, when it happened, this was not an intentional thing. It was just a mistake that made more sense than the intent, and that is why his suit is red and blue today.
It just makes a lot of sense for the casual comic book reader to look at that, see it, and think, yeah, that's mostly blue with black shading, even though it's the opposite way around. But there's just so much more blue than there's black.
It would look like Miguel if you went all black. I don't know. Just because of how they shaded it. But yeah. They also went with a very light blue for the shadows.
Yeah.
Not changed in today's interpretations of Miguel is his character and personality. That edgy, brooding version that you've seen in the animated Spider-Man movies, oh yeah, he is like that right from the jump. His writing is, I'm just gonna be blunt, it's god-awful. It is so incredibly 90s trash that it's kind of hilarious. In his first issue, there's a scene of him talking to Lila, who, yes, is also a character way back in this original, and she does the standard AI thing of just informing himself about the day, telling him the time, the temperature, the weather outlook, etc. This is not like a plot point. The only purpose of this panel is establishing that Miguel has an AI assistant, but she does tell him that there's a 50% chance of rain, which Miguel then responds to by saying, 50%, that means maybe it'll rain, maybe it won't.
Yeah. That's exactly what it means. Good. Good that we've established this.
I don't know why he says this. There's no reason for him to, but he certainly does. Also, in a future issue, he breaks the fourth wall just to make a joke about killing Aunt May. Lila is rotating through alternate personalities that she could use instead of the woman that she usually appears as, and she appears briefly as an old woman who looks uncannily like May Parker, and then Miguel looks directly at the reader and says, "Kill that one," at which point she vanishes. So with all this in mind...
What the fuck? I don't know if they interpret it this way, but I feel like the Spider-Verse movies kind of nailed it. Spider-Man are supposed to be funny. Miguel is the one with the like straight-faced, dry humor, kind of funny.
Oh, yeah,
different kind of humor.
He always has been. Yeah.
I'm really not surprised that Spider-Man 2099 became the immediate standout of this line. He is kind of cheesy, yes, but he's self-aware about it, and his origin is genuinely pretty cool. Cool in an edgy way, but that was the entire point of these 90s era comics. Thanks to his popularity, Spider-Man 2099 had the longest running of these original 4 titles at 46 issues. A lot happens during these. He fights a bunch of 2099 versions of popular Spider-Man villains like Vulture and Green Goblin, and also, Alchemax Vice President Tyler Stone is revealed to secretly be his father. But we're actually going to be skipping through a lot of that. Disappointing, I know, but here's the thing. Remember that whole bit I did at the beginning of the video where it was like, yes, no, no, yes, etc.? We are still on the first yes, and so I'm gonna have to cut some things. There are more characters that we need to cover before we can really move on to the next iteration. With the 2099 launch a success, Marvel added some new characters and books to the lineup. We're not going to spend too much time on these, but some of them are just too cool to skip, so we're definitely going to talk about them, starting with Hulk 2099. Hulk 2099 didn't actually start with his own self-titled series, he just appeared in the 2099 Unlimited anthology book, but despite that, his origin is one of the wildest in the entire verse. Remember how a while ago at this point I said that California had gotten really shocked up during the 100-year gap between the 90s and the 2090s? Yeah, the island that remained of California became known as Lotus Land, and Lotus Land was still a hotspot for film production. Enter John Eisenhart, a studio executive who was researching a group called the Knights of Banner. The Knights of Banner were another superhero religion, but a much smaller one, just actively a cult that was worshipping the old Hulk.
You know, that's actually kind of awesome. It's just a bunch of gym bros being like, man, this dude was the rippest of them all. Someday I want to be like him. And then they all just encourage each other to live to be like Hulk. Hell yeah, I support that.
Eisenhart thought that the Knights had an interesting enough story that he could make a movie out of it, so he approached them wanting to buy the rights to that sort of project. They turned him down though, at which point Eisenhart tricked a young member of the cult named Gawain, yes, like the Arthurian Gawain, into revealing all of the group's secrets to him. Through Gawain, it was revealed that the Knights weren't just worshipping Banner, they were actively researching gamma radiation in an attempt to make a new Hulk, and so Eisenhart reported them to the public eye. However, instead of just arresting the Knights, the public eye arrived and just straight up started murdering all of them. Eisenhart, feeling horrible about this, managed to save Gawain, but during the chaos was struck with the Knights' experimental gamma weapon, turning him into Hulk 2099. After this incident, Hulk 2099 vows to protect the young boy and becomes a superhero. He doesn't appear much since he was usually just in this anthology, but he does fight a cyborg named Draco who takes over Lotus Land.
Draco.
Unfortunately, he's not very good at what he does, largely due to the fact that he has one real mission, which is protect Gawain, and Gawain still does die. So rip that kid. Not too much more to say about Hulk. Like I said, we're going to cover these later ones fairly quickly, but I know the next one is going to be a character people are excited about, Ghost Rider 2099. Yeah! Ghost Rider 2099's real name is Kenshiro Cochran, nicknamed Zero because of course he is.
Huh?
Why didn't you tell me, Zero?
I don't know. I was under a strict NDA, but consider superhero really did his research from behind the scenes. If he is revealing this, then the secret's out, guys. Yeah, it's me. I'm the Ghost Rider. Every single time, man. I'm so glad I named myself Zero. Now I can have all these fun moments whenever I randomly like look at a new series. I'm like, oh, cool, Mega Man. Oh, this new Mega Man character, his name is Zero. Oh, hey, you're my spirit animal now. Love that.
It'd have to be Ghost Rider of all characters, though.
Of course it would be Ghost Rider. I love Ghost Rider. I love the whole concept. It's awesome. This is great.
And he was, get ready for some real cyberpunk nonsense, a hacker who operated out of Transverse City, a gigantic city in quotes really, that is just a massive mess of highway that occupies what was once Detroit, Chicago, and the entire span between them. Zero ran with a gang called the Hotwire Martyrs, who ran afoul of another gang called the Artificial Kids with a Z when he tried to hack into a trunk line and snag some data. Jesus Christ, this one is so cyberpunk.
Hell yeah, man. I'd hang out with these gangs. They sound cool.
Anyway, he dies in this fight, but in the last second, he uploads his consciousness into cyberspace where he meets a bunch of rogue AIs that call themselves the Ghostworks. The Ghostworks want to take down the corporate-run society and choose Zero as essentially their avatar, putting his consciousness into a robot body so that he can enact their anarchist anti-hero ideals. Thus, he becomes known as the Ghost Rider. He has nothing to do with the spirits of vengeance, or spirits, or magic at all.
Okay. We don't need to get into the whole Spirits of Vengeance thing. At this point, the AI is considered the Spirits of Vengeance now, with the origins of Zero over here.
Might as well be.
Regardless, though, very cool concept to fit in with the 2099 sort of aesthetic. It may be a little bit cheesy, but it's the perfect kind of cheese. I like it a lot.
I mean, if you're reading the 2099 comics, you gotta like this kind of cheese at least a little bit.
100%.
He's just a hacker consciousness in this Terminator body that is amped up to the 90s maximum with laser eyes and a chainsaw in its hand and all that cool stuff.
Hell yeah.
His main villains are another megacorp named Demonics. Not actually demonic, of course, but they're named that for the vibes, I guess. And of course, Demonics is helmed by Zero's father because they have to make this as edgy as they can.
Of course.
Ghost Rider 2099 is neat, but he is one of the most isolated 2099 characters, appearing in almost no crossovers and really just showing up in his own series, where he dies and then gets revived and it doesn't really matter. The last series that we're going to talk about in this section of the video is X-Men 2099, which is largely what you'd expect, a bunch of rebel mutants fighting against evil corporations. Though interestingly, the roster was entirely original, not even 2099 versions of older X-Men characters, it was all new people. The team's roster changed constantly, so I don't have time to go over all of them, but notable members included the team's leader, Desert Ghost, an anti-corporate revolutionary who in this book was a villain as often as he was a hero, Junk Pile, a very brief member who betrayed the team in issue 2, but is worth bringing up because he looks almost exactly like a Transformer. Technically his power is absorbing metal, but come on, look at him, he's a Transformer, right? And Cerebra, who is a telepath with the ability to detect mutant genes. So I guess she is kind of a port of a main universe character to 2099, but like a port of Cerebro, not technically an X-Man. X-Men 2099 was decently popular, enough that they got a spin-off series entitled X-Nation, which actually did feature a main universe character ported to the future, this one being Exodus, who had just slumbered for 100 years and woken up in 2099. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about before we start getting into the timeline weirdness is the 2099 Asgardians. These technically don't have their own series, but the concept of them is fascinating and deals with the superhero religions, so they are absolutely worth getting a spotlight.
Are gonna be so happy.
There's a whole group of these, specifically 2099 Thor, Loki, Hela, Sif, Balder, and Heimdall. However, they are not the originals from the 616 timeline, and they're technically not even Asgardians. The 2099 Aesir, as they are referred to, were not gods at all. They were a project by Alchemax to actively exploit the Thorite religion. See, the Thorites were actually pretty major. Punisher 2099 himself was one of them, and Alchemax saw an opportunity there. The Thorites were largely fanatics. I mean, not all of them were, but there was a good enough chunk who were hang gliding around the city. So they just made themselves a couple of heroes, taking a bunch of chosen people, including Thorite Reverend Cecil McAdam, and experimenting on them, giving them powers similar to that of the old Asgardians. These new Aesir were an immediate hit with the people, and so Alchemax set them on the evil vigilantes that were attacking the corporations, because as you can probably tell, literally every other hero in this universe is anti-corporate. This is the jumping off point for the first major crossover of the 2099 universe. Everybody, Punisher, Ravage, Spider-Man, Doom, and others all united to take down the 2099 Aesir. Despite being very important to the lore, the Aesir don't actually show up that much outside of their one event. In fact, one of them technically never even sees combat. There is a Lady Sif as part of the program, but she dies during the experimentation. The only 2099 Aesir who remains a problem after the crossover is done is, I suppose fittingly, Loki, while the
Yeah, I was gonna say very fittingly. Of course, of all the people to be named after, the one to still remain a thorn in people's side would be Loki.
The rest of the Aesir were all mind controlled by Alchemax into believing that they were legitimately gods. Loki managed to trick his way out of not getting that part of the treatment, so he was fully aware that he was a fraud, he just didn't really care. Once the Aesir thing is over, he uses his shape-shifting powers to rebrand as Halloween Jack. And you don't really need me to explain his personality to you. His name is Halloween Jack, and he looks like this. Make a guess, and it'll be right. And now, I want you to put a pin in this moment right here. And I'm not going to exactly explain why that is the case, but trust me on this. Just note in your mind that this is a pivotal moment which we will be returning to later, and it's going to make sense when it happens. At least as much as any of this time travel nonsense is going to make sense. The next point...
Alright, don't worry, Sir Superhero. We went through the entire BlazBlue timeline. Putting a pin in it, remembering it for later, is kind of our thing.
That we're going to be hitting is a comic called 2099 AD. Now that might sound weird. Isn't all of this AD? Yeah, technically it is, but AD in this case does not mean Anno Domini, it means After Doom. So about halfway through the 2099 imprint, somewhere in the mid-90s, Doom 2099 takes over the United States and becomes president. This was not a 2099 reboot per se, it was the same continuing universe, but it was a notable status quo shift that also gave Marvel an excuse to cancel all the titles that weren't selling very well, so the 2099 lineup got very much slimmed down. In this new era, a bunch of characters get assigned new roles. Punisher 2099 becomes the head of S.H.I.E.L.D., a new organization that Doom establishes to replace the public eye, and Ghost Rider, the anarchist android, gets his protocol overridden and also becomes an enforcer of Doom. As for Ravage, he objectively meets the worst fate in Doom's new reign, as Doom coats the entire island of Hell Rock, along with all of its inhabitants, Ravage included, in liquid adamantium, and then just shocking chunks it into space. Bruh. So Ravage is gone. Doom's run as—
Oh my god! No wonder why we don't know him.
Poor guy.
I guess he was like the worst selling one, and so they quite literally just chucked him into space to be forgotten. Oh no.
Damn.
President actually doesn't last too long though, as he is violently ousted by Captain America. Like Steve Rogers Captain America, who has somehow shown up in 2099, though this is...
I mean, I guess it is Captain America. He's the hero out of time. He's, that's his whole thing, as we learned during the whole cosmology video.
I think Cap from Rivals, isn't he canonically from 2099?
I believe so. I do recall people talking about that.
Revealed to actually be an imposter Steve, who is, guess what, controlled by Alchemax. Evil fake Steve then becomes president after Doom and orders the execution of a bunch of heroes who worked for the previous administration. This does just straight up kill them. They don't survive or get resurrected or anything like that, which was also another excuse for Marvel to cut a bunch of lines that weren't selling well. As you can probably guess, this is very much the decline era for 2099.
That is really sad. It is so sad to see this happen. I can somewhat understand from like a business perspective. If it's really not selling well, there's not a whole lot of reason to continue it.
Incredibly ironic, considering the anti-capitalist comic run murders a bunch of its heroes
because of capitalism.
Selling well.
That is really funny that you pointed out that way. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, Marvel themselves are still a company. So
Yep. I think it is a shame though. It's like having a character death happen, like I'm a fan of, like having a character die and stay dead can have so much impact. But when it's clearly just done to be like hand wavy, like, yeah, just get rid of them. It's like that doesn't have any impact and it just is sad. I don't know. I don't you lose that character and gain nothing.
all the people who are like, they killed my favorite Marvel 2099 character. Just having the news tied around them. That Pirate of the Caribbean meme. It's me and all the other Warhammer Fantasy fans on the side being like, first time? Yeah.
Some of this actually has real-world reasoning, as Marvel fired the editor in charge of this line during some cost-cutting measures, and a bunch of the creators who were making the comics quit in protest, so they just did not have anything working for them at this time, which meant it was a great time to introduce new comics. This is when that X-Nation spin-off I mentioned happens, and also is the introduction of Fantastic Four 2099, not even really worth mentioning much because they are not new characters, it's just the present Fantastic Four sent into the future, and the comic did not last long enough to be that interesting. As the F4 thing implies, this is also when Marvel started experimenting with time travel from the present to 2099, and there were a couple crossovers between the Spider-Mans and the Dooms, though those were the only ones. As a last-ditch effort to save the series from its rapidly failing sales, Marvel canceled all of the other 2099 lines and sort of combined them into one called 2099 World of Tomorrow. The largest plotline of this involved the alien phalanx invading Earth and somehow flooding America, which later caused more conflict with the Atlanteans. It was not popular at all. It ran for 8 issues and then was promptly canceled. Then the last vestiges of the 2099 imprint, though obviously not forever as the length of this video very clearly shows, was 2099 Manifest Destiny, a one-shot comic that was supposed to wrap everything up. This comic it is certainly a lot. The big inciting incident in Manifest Destiny is that Steve Rogers shows up, but it's not an imposter. This time it's the real one who was apparently put into some form of stasis a second time. And in the future, he also becomes Thor, because, you know, the whole Thorite religion. He's basically their Jesus. Now, technically, this next part is a correction of something I said earlier in the video, but I thought it would be funnier if I addressed it here because of how wild it is. Remember near the beginning, I said that there was a brief handbook mention of a spatial barrier that was keeping humanity locked to Earth? Turns out that wasn't just mentioned in a handbook, it is from Manifest Destiny. In this comic, Uatu shows up and informs the heroes of Earth about this barrier, and then a major plot point is all of them going into space so that they can use their powers to just kind of shoot the barrier until it breaks. They don't have to do anything fancy to disable it. It's literally just everybody shooting the space wall. Opening up intergalactic travel again helps their society advance, and so then the remaining pages are speed running through a time skip of the next 1,000 years or something, where they expand into space and everything gets fixed. And then as a final bit of weirdness, Ghost Rider 2099 ascends to becoming a transcendent AI supergod. And that's it. The original 2099 is over. And now you probably picked up...
Weird. This is very clearly written in a way where the series is going to get axed. We gotta wrap this shit up. And
there's not a whole lot of care in it. They're just like, give it a climax, I guess.
It is a real damn shame when this happens, but it happens to so many series.
On the fact that I really ran fast through everything between After Doom and Manifest Destiny, and there's a reason for that. Remember that pin that I told you to drop? It's going to become relevant in a few minutes. While 2099 would be referenced occasionally in the coming years, the next major 2099 publication came in 2004. This was a mini-event called Marvel Knights 2099. For those not familiar with the Marvel Knights title, it's an imprint that Marvel used to use for some of their grittier, darker comics. They're apparently bringing it back briefly, but that's another story. For Marvel Knights 2099, it was 5 one-shots: Daredevil, Black Panther, Inhumans, Mutants, and Punisher. The thing that made Marvel Knights 2099 kind of odd is that it had legitimately nothing to do with the original. Yes, it was a bunch of new characters, but these new characters weren't even in the same iteration of 2099. Even the Punisher 2099 was a completely separate one. As you might be able to guess from the
Okay, so this is probably where it comes into, like, 2099 is the future, but it's also not. There's some probable ideas being thrown out here based off of 2099, and maybe they were like, we gotta reboot it because it originally didn't sell too well in the way that we expected, so just try and remake it, but then maybe they go back on that later.
I think if I had to guess, and this is, again, I haven't seen this video, so I don't really know, but I think of the original 2099 run, there were a lot of things people liked about it. I think people like Spider-Man a lot. That's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I think people liked Punisher and Doom to an extent, but not to the same extent as Spider-Man. And Spider-Man fans have been bred to like different iterations of Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And those tend to come back and interact and things. So if I had to guess, they killed off the original 2099 setting because it wasn't selling the way that they wanted it to. Tried to reboot it, that didn't take off either, but people still wanted that original Spider-Man 2099. And so the Spider-Man 29 presence would come back. And I don't know if it comes back in a Spider-Verse or if because he gets a later run in, like, I want to say 2014, though I could be wrong. Gotcha. I might have said it earlier, actually. I don't know. But in bringing back Miguel, you have to bring back that original 2099 setting to an extent. And in the run where he comes back with the white suit, he does do a lot of time travel, like, fuckery, too. So I think it probably becomes a mixture of wanting to keep the characters that people actually liked, and the setting is kind of a package deal with parts of that.
Gotcha.
And how much they actually want to keep of the setting versus just keep the characters. I don't know.
Like, thinking of
That's
this
my guess.
Outside of the lore perspective, that makes a lot of sense. The characters that aren't selling well enough, we're going to revamp and try to actually sell them by creating a new characters, but just keep the thing that was already working. And I guess this was during a time where the whole cosmology multiversal thing wasn't, like, laid down to a T, so we had a lot more flexibility in terms of this.
The fact that these comics were marketed as an alternate version of an alternate future, I don't think they were super popular, at least not to my knowledge. I did have to read all of them for this video, though, and I can now say that while they weren't popular, they're also not good. Damn. The Marvel Knights 2099 world isn't even really cyberpunk half the time, and I need to say half the time because these comics don't make much of an effort to even feel connected to each other. There is technically a very, very loose thread about anti-mutant stuff, but it's not enough to keep things cohesive. Luckily, these are all one-shot comics, so I can just blast through them real fast. Mutant 2099 is the comic that gives us the most information on this version of 2099, which again is just totally unconnected to the previous in every way. This one diverged from the main timeline because of a thing called the Mutant Registration Act. Basically, someone figures out a process to identify mutant genes at birth, and then all of those people are identified and given mutant-suppressing drugs. One kid named Chad Channing, wow, discovered...
Oh, I almost folded over.
Right there.
Wow. I was not expecting that. Okay. Just took me off guard a little bit. Let's continue.
There's the preserved brain of Reed Richards underneath the Baxter building, and Reed supplies him with placebo medicine, which he then takes instead of the mutant suppressing drugs, allowing his powers to flourish. Those powers are telekinesis, but like a weird type of personal telekinesis, which he uses exclusively on himself. He can increase his own agility and strength, stick to walls, and also propel himself through the air in a weird bouncing sort of motion, which, yes, is basically just psychic mutant Spider-Man. That's kind of all that this character is. Okay. Daredevil 2099 is Samuel Fisk, grandson of Wilson Fisk, which is actually a pretty cool concept. He still runs the Fisk crime family and is well aware of how his family's history works. He has heard the story of his grandfather killing Daredevil with his bare hands, which is something that happened in this world's history. Possessing all the power and resources of the Fisk Empire, but feeling very guilty about how exactly it was gained, he spends a lot of his wealth on making an advanced battlesuit and goes out to fight crime as Daredevil 2099. He's basically Batman more than he is Daredevil. He's kind of just Bruce Wayne, but with crime history and a red suit, and the visuals definitely support that. Punisher 2099, or I guess specifically Marvel Knights Punisher 2099, has a somewhat interesting concept, but doesn't
For whatever reason, the artwork here reminds me of Blam. Just the way the faces are drawn.
It looks more anime than most Marvel comics.
Yeah, it definitely looks like a manga. A little bit more.
Doesn't get the time needed to develop it right.
No.
The book is about the daughter of Frank Castle and Elektra, who has carried on her father's legacy and kept being the Punisher into her adulthood.
Oh, hey.
When we meet her in the comic, she is old and dying of cancer, and then the plot is about her passing on that family legacy to her son, who for some reason looks distractingly like Cloud Strife, but whatever.
Oh my god, I mean, from this angle, yeah. Yeah, he does. And it's the more anime style, too. It really does feel very anime.
The idea of a teenager having to take on the very loaded title of the Punisher despite not really wanting it is an interesting idea, I'll give it that. Unfortunately, since this is just a one-shot buried in a collection of AU stories, it does not have the time to develop the characters to a point where we care about them and therefore just falls flat. Also, I need to point out the insane false advertising on this one, because this woman is supposed to be old. Like, that's the point of the book, and she is drawn to look old in the actual comic itself.
What?
But I guess that they decided that would not sell well on the cover, and so she looks like this.
Damn.
Within the span of 5 minutes, I've had to fold over twice. What the hell is happening here? This really is false advertising. Oh, I feel like I got ripped off.
See those videos on like Twitter or Shorts or something? It's like you have this pretty woman and she starts taking off her makeup and it's this old lady.
Oh my god, that is a dick move, Marvel. What the hell is this?
Here. Black Panther 2099 is a strange one because there's really no reason it has to be a 2099 thing. There's nothing future-y about it. It just reads like a Wakanda versus Latveria AU. The Wakandan royal family is dead, I guess that's kind of future-y, but whatever, and a high council has been assembled to take their place. Then, an army of Doombots attacks Wakanda, and one councilman, a man named Kashamba, manages to escape. He becomes a resistance leader against the occupation, takes on the title of Black Panther, and manages to drive the invaders out. But then there's a final twist, which reveals that Kashamba was working for Doom the entire time, and this entire invasion was a plot to install Wakandan leadership that would be subservient to Latveria. And that's just how the comic ends. This one has a bad ending, actually. And then finally, Inhumans 2099. This one is kind of boring and pointless. The Inhumans live in a spaceship now because they left Earth after human oppression, and Maximus, the main Inhuman evil guy, is their leader. Then Black Bolt wakes up from cryostasis and sees that Maximus is in charge of everything and freaks out and screams and blows up the ship and kills everybody. And that's just it, the 2099.
Inhumans. Man, they can't catch a break.
I had to fold over 3 times. What is this bullshit? I thought we were going somewhere. Woke up Black Bolt. That dude's the leader now. Ah! Everybody dies.
Oh man.
Oh my god. But yeah. We really just took the name 2099, probably because it sounded cool. We didn't actually do anything with the cyberpunk setting at all. Well, really a shame, but also really funny, so I'll give it a pass.
Inhumans never show up again, and that's also the end of the Knights 2099 event, a weird little chapter in 2099 history. So now you might be starting to get an idea of what the whole yes, no, no, yes bit from the intro was. 2099
I don't think Marvel
has
knows what they want to do with it.
And time shenanigans. Knights was one of the no's that I was talking about. This is just a separate one that mattered for about a month and then never again. The next 2099 that we're going to be covering is another one of these situations. There was a gap of a couple years in 2099 publication to 2009, with the very subtly named Time Storm 2009-2099. This one is at least a little bit closer to the original because it does share several characters, but those characters have entirely different origins and personalities, so I don't know how much they exactly count.
Are they the same?
The plot of this one does begin with Jake Gallows as the Punisher, but in this third distinct iteration of 2099, his family was not killed by Kron Stone and was instead killed by costumed people pretending to be superheroes. This meant that rather than hating criminals, Punisher hated
superheroes?
all superheroes. He is
What?
then sent back into the past of 2009 by Tyler Stone.
I don't remember anymore. I'm getting things confused.
But also, like, my guy, does he not know that there were people just dressed up as superheroes? And now we're equating it to superheroes, not fucked up people who dressed up as superheroes?
What's the difference?
There is a very big difference, actually.
Who is manipulating Punisher by pretending to be Thor. He gives him the sacred mission to kill all heroes in the heroic age, and he starts by shooting Spider-Man.
God.
Peter Parker's apparent death starts screwing up stuff in the timeline, but then of course it is revealed that Peter did not actually die, and somehow Punisher's gun sent him into 2099 instead. Cue the rest of Time Storm, basically two storylines happening at the same time as characters from the 2 points in the timeline cross over with each other. Now, this doesn't sound that weird at first. Sure, there's a different origin for Punisher, but otherwise, the idea of there being an official time travel crossover between the 2 points makes sense and wouldn't necessarily break canon. Except, for reasons unknown, they decided that their most popular character from 2099, Miguel O'Hara, should be just an entirely different guy. This Miguel is a teenager who is in a science class when the temporal anomalies, predictably named the Time Storm, hits 2099. The combination of radiation from that event and the spider in front of him is what gives him his abilities. So they just kind of took Miguel, removed the unique parts of his origin, and turned him into almost one-for-one future Peter Parker.
What the fuck?
Yeah. Feels bad.
You remember that
Definitely haven't
suggestion
read this.
that you made earlier about them, like, you know, keeping Miguel as he was and changing everybody else? Yeah, that made too much sense, apparently. It always baffles me when companies make decisions like they hate making money.
I mean, it's kind of, they took back the characters that were most popular. And they're like, how much of the original setting should we use? None of it? Okay, good.
I guess that was just like a blanket statement. And they were trying to make something new, but the character that everybody's attached to is a certain way, and having somebody else just fulfill the role without any sort of lead up to it, I don't think that's going to go over well in any scenario. Unless, you know, and in the one scenario where the original character was kind of hated and you have to revamp it, then I can understand. But this was your most popular one. I don't know.
Bring back Ravager.
Yeah.
Space.
So in 2099 at the time, the two team up, he teaches the younger Miguel how to use his abilities, and everything else proceeds as you'd expect. There's a lot of fights as things and people from the timelines cross over with each other, and it's all eventually stabilized by Cerebra, the psychic mutant from X-Men 2099, though once again a younger version. Most of Time Storm was pretty forgettable, but there is one character from it that I really like, that being Human Torch 2099. His name is Relur, and ironically, he's not actually human, he is an Atlantean. He is also a mutant, and his power is fire generation like the classic Human Torch.
That's actually hilarious, considering that you're an Atlantean, but you're also the Torch, so I kind of contradictory,
kind of
but
a neat concept.
Cool idea.
Interesting power for an Atlantean, right? And at first you might just think it's useless since he's using it underwater, but any physicist will tell you that if his ignition is hot enough in a deep, high-pressure environment, that is a very, very dangerous ability to have. He is then banished to the surface by his people, who see him as a crime against nature. There he fights and later teams up with Spider-Man 2099. So on the one hand, they are still just making Miguel like a Peter clone by having him befriend Human Torch. But on the other hand, I really like this as a character concept. The idea of an exiled Atlantean firebender is...
It's a shame, that it comes at the cost of a better character. Because otherwise, I do think that concept would be cool.
In the bad, there's always going to be some pretty neat ideas sprinkled in. Not everything is always going to be perfect, as it is.
True.
Cool as hell, and I would love to see a version of this character appear in the main universe at some point. Timestorm and this version of 2099 never really mattered again once it was over, but I will say that after reading all of it for this video, it almost seems like the writers were trying to set it up as the new 2099 status quo that would get more content later, but then it never did, and so it goes into the record as just another weird alternate 2099 that would not be referenced anymore. Fortunately though, we are now done with these. Everything for the rest of this video is going to be more related to actual canon. No more.
All right. Awesome. And I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up here for now, though. Looking forward to once we get back to actual 2099. Man, they had like such a cool idea, but maybe it just wasn't selling too well, either because the concept itself didn't really gel with people, or maybe it was just a little too far ahead of its time. I don't know. What do you think happened?
I think part of it too. I know Spider-Man Unlimited was an animated TV series. It's a weird TV series too. Mm-hmm. Not personally a huge fan of it, but I more so have a grudge against it because originally when it was supposed to come out, it was intended as a Spider-Man 2099 TV show. But with kind of the failings of the 2099 series, they kind of just decided to rebrand it as an alternate Spider-Man. And so it's Pete going into the future and fighting a bunch of weird things in the future. But it's a shame.
Yeah. It is a shame because I am personally a pretty big fan of this type of setting. But I can maybe understand that at the time that it came out in, maybe it wasn't the thing. Maybe there wasn't a lot more popular media with this particular setting, or maybe it just didn't work for the comic book fans at the time. I'm not really sure.
It's hard to say because I didn't read it in the time of it airing, right? I read it in my teens, reading back from my Marvel Unlimited account. But I just have to assume just didn't hit with the target audience at the time or something. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a big Spider-Man fan and I like the kind of dry humor, edgy character. But I like Miguel a lot. He's always been my favorite hero.
A few fumbles along the way. Some false advertising too. Like, damn you. Why would you draw her so young? And she's
so
just
funny.
I'm like, what?
She's not even like the Punisher of the series then if it's supposed to be the kid.
Yeah, she's not either.
Stripe's the fucking Punisher.
And then what? You have the dude just waking up and being like, ah! Everybody die! What was that?
Why?
But okay, yeah. Marvel do be a little bit silly sometimes. Hopefully we turn things around though. But yes, that is going to wrap it up for this part of the video. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Hope you guys enjoyed your time here. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and Serby and I will catch you guys next time. Later, dudes.
Bye-bye.